Hello and welcome to this week's tutorial. I'm going to be painting the Reaper Miniatures King of Hell figure. Now I've picked up some new subscribers, so I thought it'd be good to go from the start of the painting process. So I prepared the mini by giving it an overall primer coat of Citadel Chaos Black. Now this is sprayed through the airbrush because the older Reaper Bones material reacted badly to aerosol primers. I'm not sure the new Reaper Black material does, but just to be on the safe side, I'm airbrushing the primer coat on. So when this is finished, I got in really close with a coat of Spacewolves Grey and started doing the highlighting, concentrating on the upper areas where the light would catch the skin tone, so on and so forth. And just for reference, I'm using a Hodder and Steenbeck airbrush with a 1.5 needle, so you can get some really nice detail done with this brush. So after the pre-shade was completed, the wings were removed. I didn't glue these in place to ease the painting process, and the body was given an all-over coat of contrast Fleshtearer's red. This was slightly diluted, but it was a really nice deep red, rich texture. So this went all over the skin tones, making sure I didn't miss any areas. And you can see the pre-shade doing its work, just showing through underneath the base coat. The wing spines received a similar treatment. The knuckle joins on the spines also received a pre-shade, which just really helped get some contrast because they're very dark areas. You want a little bit of colour here, a little bit of difference, so that just helped the process. Now when the flesh tone was dry, I thought I'd go back in and add some highlights with the airbrush. So this was done using EvilSunz Scarlet, lightened to various degrees, concentrating on the face, the upper areas of the muscles, so on so forth, just to add some real contrast. So when this was dry, a very sparing wash of Duruti Violet was applied just in the recesses of the muscles and just around the edges of the clothing and the belt and so on and so forth, just to complement the contrast that had been provided by the highlights done with the airbrush. The wings were given an all-over coat of Lyandren yellow contrast paint, and this was applied quite liberally just to get into the areas. You see the pre-shade forms a really nice basis for the paint to go on top. Now, I didn't film the process, but I added a slightly diluted tone of the Fleshtearer's red, just to add another degree of contrast a little later on in the build process. The Loin Cloth was given a base coat of Ushabti Bone, mixed in with quite a bit of paint retarder. This allowed the subsequent light and shade paint coats to be blended in and gave you plenty of time to work on the articles. So you got a far more natural effect without using the paint retarder. It's almost like you're painting black and white, or in this case sort of brown and white lines, to add the highlights and contrast. With the paint retarder you get a much more organic look between the different shades and colours, so on and so forth. And when this was dry, the area was given an overall wash of very diluted Griffin sepia, just to blend all the different shades in. So the next step of the build, and probably the most time consuming, was painting the Trident. So the edges were given a coat of EvilSunz Scarlet with quite a bit of paint retarder and quite a thin coat as well, because you want to blend the subsequent colours in. So this is just added around the base, the cooler areas of the metal, I suppose, just to form a basis for the painting process. Next up, a slightly lightened coat using just a touch of blazing orange was added just to give some contrast. This just helped blend the colours together. Again, with the paint retarder helped the two colours really integrate well, and that's what we're after, a smooth transition between the two different shades. So next added a tiny bit of yellow to the orange mix, just to get a little bit more of an accent in the centre of the piece, moving towards yellow basically. Just the hotter parts of the metal received this treatment. So adding yet more yellow again, just to the extremities, the tips of the Trident, just to really show where the heat would build up naturally. And again, these are blended in, so they blend in with the early colours. With the use of the wet palette, you can always go backwards and forwards and correct anything if you're not happy with it. So now you can see I'm adding almost pure yellow to the extremities of the Trident and the edges and so on and so forth, just to really get that white hot metal look. You can see trying to be sparing, and the paint's a little thicker as well, just to really accent the tips of the area. So you see it's looking really quite nice. And also added some white highlights mixed in with the yellow just at the very extremities. Now I'm going back and adding some darker red just to the areas where the metal would be a bit colder. Again, the more contrast you add, I think the more realistic it looks. And it's just a case of practice, going backwards and forwards, adding different shades as you see fit. So the final stage, I added some very diluted burnt umber just to illustrate where the metal had cooled down. And this was the final contrast and really brought out the more vibrant colours that I painted on earlier. So here you see the miniature's pretty much finished, just got the base to do and a few bits. I decided not to include the non-metallic metal painting I did on the armour in this video. I was going to make that subject of another video in the next few weeks because it really is quite a time-consuming process. But it uses some of the techniques that I used on the Sceptre. So here's the finished miniature. Thanks again for watching the video, and I'll see you next time. Take care.